and 18 degrees. Our News Extra program is next. It's presented today by Gering Civic Center, and here's Kevin Mooney.
Thank you, Dennis, and good morning, everyone. And we're going to have a very interesting discussion here for maybe about almost 10 minutes this morning. And then we have John Kaatz here with CSL, Convention Sports and Leisure. They're the tourism consulting group that's going to put together the strategic tourism plan for the state. He's been around the Panhandle for the last 3 days or so. We have Ken Mabery here from the Scottsbluff National Monument, superintendent there. Karla Niedan's also here, executive director of the Gering Convention and Visitors Bureau. So we're going to just talk tourism in general. And I guess, John, the first thing is you've been here for 3 days. You're up by Crawford and Chadron and Alliance,
Exactly.
Bridgeport, and then over here in Gering last night. What were people telling you about this particular area as far as what we need to promote, what they want to promote, what visitors are asking them to do?
Well, first of all, we have been traveling the entire Panhandle. Started in Crawford on Monday and have been meeting with tourism groups, community groups. We've probably talked to well over 100 individuals representing many, many tourism organizations throughout the Panhandle. And I think there's a great pride in some of the assets that exist in this part of the state. There's also an understanding that not a lot of people know about what we have here, that even folks out east in Nebraska aren't aware of all of the natural attractions, truly world-class history that exists in this part of the state. So the question is, how do we get the word out, not just to other folks in the state, but the entire region and the entire country, and even internationally, as to what we have to offer here? The idea is to create a strategic plan where we can introduce what we have to the broader traveling public, generate more economic impact, more dollars in our community.
All right. Some of those things people have talked about, I've noticed in some of the reports I got from some of my colleagues up north, and then from Bill Boyer, who's from our station, and Bridgeport and so forth. And just one of the things I think everybody talked about was the need for a visitor center over by Kimball, and the fact that we don't have that right now. I mean, I'm actually talking a nice visitor center. I mean, not just, something that tells people when they get there and they get off the road what's up here north all the way up to Chadron and even east toward Lisco and Lake McConaughey and Ogallala.
Well, there was that concern registered. In fact, that was an issue brought up all across the Panhandle. And the notion is we have I-80, which is kind of a lifeblood of potential visitors going right through the state. And how do we get our share of those to stop in? And right now, if you're heading east, you're basically in Ogallala before you get any information about what you just passed. We've heard a number of people say that they've been to Scottsbluff many, many times passing through on I-80. They really haven't seen what exists. So,
yeah.
So the notion of having some sort of opportunity to draw them off the interstate as soon as possible, I think was an important issue raised many, many times.
Okay. And we'll get Ken in on this conversation here, because I know this is one of the things he's concerned about is signage and roads department regulations regarding that, and that's Ken, one of the big things that you guys worry about. I think even Karla worries about it a little bit. There's no signs here that say you're supposed to go to the Gering Convention Center, or I think there is a sign for the monument, but nothing else when you're on 71, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a healthy debate about that, whether we want to look at more billboards, which of course then kind of interrupts the scenery of Nebraska, or do we want to look at more highway signage within the right-of-way? I personally like the brown and white signs to promote things. It kind of says that this is sanctioned if you have brown and white signs.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. You would like that too, wouldn't you, Karla? Because when people come to the Civic Center, how many people go all the way to Scottsbluff and then have to turn around and come back if they're from out of state?
We've had that happen a lot, Kevin, and even people who used to live here have ended up, because of the expressway over in Scottsbluff and thought they were coming to the Civic Center, and how do they get back? So signage, I don't think that's unique to our communities in our area, but it's so important for us to be able to draw that visitor off the interstate to our part of the country, like John said. But then once we get them into our area, it's so important that we have the right signage to direct them to the attractions and the services that are going to keep them here in our community for a longer period of time. And we desperately need some additional signs. As you know, the Valley Visions Committee has worked on a phase 1 and phase 2, and phase 3 will be a little more destination directional signs within our communities, but we need some assistance and help with the Department of Roads for us to be very effective in that area to help our visitors. And ultimately, that's what we're here to do, to present our product to the visitors, to get them to our area, to let them spend time, enjoy the things that we have to offer, and a good visitor experience. And signage is a key component of that.
All right. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this 30-second timeout.
With vibrant history
All right.
and premier facilities,
We'll
the
talk
Gering
about
Civic Center is the
maybe
ideal
legislative
location for reunions.
fixes.
With professional staff to assist in event planning
You
and
were
room
talking
layout.
about promoting us
And
not
camp
only
and
around
workshop.
Nebraska,
Your
but
reunion
nationally,
will be
internationally. I guess
spectacular.
we should
To
talk about
West
that
Nebraska's
first, how we do
premier
that.
multifunction facility at 436-6888 or visit
Around
us
the
at
region and all that kind of stuff.
www.geringciviccenter.com for your reunions. The Gering Civic Center, where winners meet.
Sometimes it's just
All right, we are back talking tourism this morning. We have John Kaatz here from CSL, Convention Sports and Leisure. That's the tourism consulting group doing the strategic tourism plan that you got. This is your first stop as far as looking at the state, right, and talking to people one-to-one.
Well, it is. We actually have a small team out in the eastern part of the state right now. They were the unlucky ones. I got the
Yeah,
right
you
kind
got
of the
you
right
got
stick.
God's country. Yeah.
I did. So we are canvassing the whole state, not just the western region, to try to catalog the assets that exist to create that statewide strategic plan.
All right, and that plan gets submitted to the legislature next summer. Is that
Yep, I
right?
think we're looking for June.
All right. Okay. You talked about promoting us nationally and internationally. Were there any suggestions in these 3 days on how to do that, or do you have any specific ideas on how to do that as you look at the last 3 days here?
Well, we're working on that. I mean, I think there's the challenge of creating the right perception and the right understanding amongst the traveling public as to what Nebraska has to offer. Right now, there are methods of traditional advertising and marketing, the brochures, television, radio, etc. Emphasize radio. There's also this whole movement of social media, and the notion that I can be sitting by Chimney Rock and I take a picture on my cell phone of my children with the rock in the background, and now that picture doesn't just sit in an album in my living room. It's all across the country. It's relatives, and they spread that. So there's a whole phenomenon of social media, web-based media that we'd like to see a little more of, and I think there's some opportunities there to create a broader platform. And that's not just advertising, that becomes almost a PR issue. People talking to people create this buzz about what exists here, and I think that would be very, very effective, so we're looking closely at that.
All right. Ken, when you guys get a lot of people from other states and other countries, and when they visit, what do they say when they're in this area? Why they're here and how they got here and what drew them here and that type of
Well,
thing?
it is kind of a neat phenomenon that Europeans know much more about our Western history than many of the people in the United States. And when they're searching for places to go, they want to come to Nebraska because this has the icons, the landmark country kind of stuff. And yet our local people kind of overlook it. So I think John's right on track that the social media area needs to be explored more to get it to the local people.
Yeah. Legislative fixes. We were talking outside before this about legislative fixes. Karla, there are some things maybe they can do regarding the roads department with possibly the regulations on signs. And I guess liability insurance is big too, isn't it?
That's been a discussion amongst Nebraska's tourism industry for a number of years, and the legislature has made several attempts at looking at the legislation as it relates to liability insurance. We talked to a lot of people yesterday about how great it would be to do horseback riding in the Wildcat Hills and more outfitting and hunting and those types of activities, wagon rides between the Farm and Ranch Museum and Scottsbluff National Monument. All of those are true experiences that we could offer to our visitors, but the legislation as it relates to liability insurance in our state is so prohibitive. Small businesses just can't afford it, and so you don't see these types of new development of tourism businesses and agro-tourism simply because they can't afford the insurance. So we as an industry need to work with our legislators and get some legislation passed that allows those people to start new businesses and be productive and successful in giving visitor experiences. And legislation is the key.
Yeah, not worry about the liability insurance.
Exactly.
Right?
There's a wealth of vision and ideas out, and we heard a lot about that yesterday in our meetings. But the reality of it is, if you can't afford to insure your business, and something happens, it's detrimental, and you lose your business. So
Yeah.
that's really an important part of growing this type of industry for our part of the country and all the entire state.
A notion came up yesterday about kind of demonstration projects to promote tourism, where you've got a whole bunch of tubes up on the Niobrara River. Get somebody to bring them down here and do a demonstration project on how it could work down here. If it works, takes off, good, they're good to go. If it doesn't, there's been no investment. But this whole thing of insurance kind of blocks that.
Yeah, you need some kind of state law that says you're free of liability if you're some kind of tourist attraction.
Correct.
Okay. All right, real quick, John, we only got about 30 seconds. Once again, just kind of wrap it up. Where you go from here, what type of things you'll be doing in the next 6 months?
Well, we've covered a lot of the western and panhandle region, and we've got some folks out east, as I mentioned. We're going to canvass the rest of the states and assemble all of the comments, the feedback, the observations we've made. We'll take a look at how other states have successfully marketed themselves and analyze visitor demographics, what they're looking for, what their concerns are, and through that put together not just a strategic plan, but really a roadmap, a set of next steps for the state to take. And the hope is that this just doesn't sit on a shelf, it actually leads somewhere, and we'll work very hard to get there.
All right, very good. Thanks for stopping by. Appreciate
Pleasure.
it.
Thank you.
All right, you bet.
Thank you.
All right, back to you, Dan.